So how is the growth of a population limited? We talked about hydrilla in the last screencast, how it's invaded and taken over in lots of different places, 6 of 7 continents to be exact. In Asia, it reaches a carrying capacity and population growth stops, but here in the United States and in other places where it has invaded, it grows out of control. What's the difference there? Limiting factor is just like it sounds. It's a factor that controls population growth. So you can have lots of different situations that limit a population. Competition, predation, parasitism, disease, those depend on population density. The other ones, natural disasters and unusual weather, do not depend on population density. We got different names for those. Density-dependent limiting factors work when population density reaches a certain level. They don't affect small populations as much. So these include competition, predation, herbivory, parasitism, disease, and stress from overcrowding. Obviously, competition depends on the population density. We're competing for lots of different things: food, water, space, sunlight, and other essentials. Some individuals get enough to survive and reproduce, and others don't. Some get just enough to live, but not enough to produce offspring. Others might starve to death or die from lack of shelter. Competition can lower birth rates, increase death rates, or both. Competition is density dependent. The more individuals in an area, the sooner they use up the resources. Makes sense. Often space and food are connected. Grazing animals compete for territories in which to breed and raise offspring. Individuals that do not succeed find no mates and cannot breed. Male wolves can fight each other for territory or access to mates. So these are all different forms of competition. Competition can occur between members of different species that attempt to use similar or overlapping resources. That is the niche. This is a major force behind evolutionary change. Predators and herbivores are two very important density-dependent population controls. What you see here, a couple things I want to point out. This is fluctuations in wolf and moose populations. Sometimes the moose population grows large enough that the moose become easy prey for wolves. When wolves have plenty to eat, their population grows. So we see the moose population goes up first, and then the wolf population cycles along with it. Take a look at this graph real quick. Because the numbers are so different, here with the number of wolves and the number of moose, we have two different y-axes, one on the left and one on the right. Because if we had all of these numbers on the same scale, it'd be a little bit difficult to plot it out. So keep that in mind. As the wolf populations grow, whoops, hang on, they begin to kill more moose than are born. The moose population will fall. So what we see here, here's the moose population going up. The moose is red, the red curve. Moose population goes up, and the wolf population follows it. Here's the wolf population going up and following it. Now we need to see that moose population go down. When the moose population goes down, wolves begin to starve, wolf population falls. When only a few predators are left, the moose death rate drops, the cycle repeats. Moose population goes up, then the wolf population goes up. Herbivory can contribute to changes in population numbers as well. From a plant's perspective, herbivores are predators. So, large dense moose populations can eat so much fir, it's a type of a tree, that the population of the food drops. And then the moose can suffer from lack of food. Then we see starvation happening. So that's a form of competition. Unfortunately, human activity limits populations as well. Fishing fleets have raised cod death rates so high that birth rates cannot keep up. So the cod population has been dropping. If you scale back fishing, that can help that recover. So biologists are studying birth rates and age structure of the cod population to figure out how much fishing can be done without threatening the survival of the population. Parasites and disease-causing organisms feed at the expense of their hosts. Ticks can transmit bacteria that cause disease. Parasitism and disease are density dependent because if you have a bunch of organisms that are close to one another, parasites and disease are more easily spread between them. What I want to point out here is a dramatic drop in the wolf population right here. That's due to disease. Canine parvovirus was accidentally introduced to the island. It killed all but 13 wolves, and only 3 of the survivors were females, so only 3 possible females to produce offspring. The removal of wolves, see after that happened, did you see, here goes the moose population going crazy. Then the density-packed moose became infested with winter ticks that caused hair loss and weakness, so their population dropped. Species can fight among themselves if there's overcrowding. That's just another way to call competition. Too much fighting can cause high levels of stress, weaken the body's ability to resist disease. Females can neglect, kill, or even eat their own offspring. Stress from overcrowding can lower birth rates, raise death rates, or both, and increase rates of emigration. So those are all examples of density-dependent limiting factors. Density-independent limiting factors affect all populations in similar ways, regardless of population size and density. So we have natural disasters and unusual weather that it doesn't matter how many deer or moose or wolves are in an area, if there's a wildfire, a hurricane, a drought, or a flood, it's going to wipe out a significant chunk of that population. A drought can kill off great numbers of fish in a river. So you can see a population crash. After the crash, the population can build up again quickly, or it can stay low. It's interesting because density-independent factors can actually vary or cycle with population density. So sometimes it's difficult to say if a factor is only density independent. Here's an example. You see the moose population growing exponentially after the wolf population crashed. We're talking about right here. But then a cold winter and heavy snowfall covered the plants that the moose feed on, the fur, and made it difficult for the moose to find food. So because this was an island population, no immigration possible, emigration, and the moose weakened and many died. So that when we see that drop there. So what we see is that you have effects of bad weather on the large dense population, and those were greater than they would have been on a small population. There would have been less competition, and so it's a sort of a combination between density dependent and density independent factors. Let's go back to hydrilla. Density dependent population limiting factors keep it under control where it's meant to be in Asia. Maybe they're planning eating insects or fish or pests or diseases, but those limiting factors aren't found in the United States, and then we get population growth out of control. There are artificial density independent control measures like herbicides, mechanical removal, but these are only temporary fixes, and they're expensive. Researchers have been trying for a long time to figure out natural predators and pests of hydrilla. Now, here's the deal. The best means of control seems to be an imported fish called grass carp, which views hydrilla as an especially tasty treat. Grass carp are not native to the United States. Only sterilized grass carp can be used to control hydrilla. This is so. Now, there might not be any natural predators of grass carp in the United States. Probably aren't, actually. And so, if we bring those in and introduce species, and they're allowed to reproduce, then you see growth out of control of another introduced species.